Emma and Ryan never imagined their love would turn into a high-stakes chase through forests, backroads, and the eyes of the law, but when Ryan became a wanted man, Emma made a choice that would put them both on the run, testing loyalty, courage, and survival in ways no one could have predicted. It was a quiet evening in a small suburban town, the kind of place where life moved slowly and neighbors waved from porches as they passed. Streetlights flickered gently over neat rows of houses, their lawns carefully trimmed and fences freshly painted. In a town like this, nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen, and people took comfort in that sense of predictability. Emma lived in one of those houses, a modest apartment above a small bakery her parents owned. She had always been known as responsible and caring, someone people trusted. Her days were filled with nursing classes, part-time work at a clinic, and evenings spent with Ryan, her boyfriend. On the surface, Emma's life was ordinary, almost idyllic. Ryan, in contrast, had a side that very few people knew. To outsiders, he was charming, easygoing, and intelligent. But behind that facade was a man living on the edge, carrying a weight that made him invisible in some ways and dangerous in others. Months before, Ryan had become involved in illegal activities, first small thefts that seemed harmless, then more serious crimes that drew the attention of law enforcement. Rumors of a robbery ring circulated, and soon he was officially on the run, a wanted man in the eyes of the law. Emma knew some of it, but not all. She only knew that Ryan had always been protective of her, had always insisted he could fix things, and she believed him without hesitation. For weeks, life had balanced on a knife's edge. Emma would wake up in the morning, go to class, and check her phone obsessively, looking for any news about Ryan. She scoured online news reports, hoping to find a clue or a sign that he was safe. The anxiety gnawed at her, but she refused to let it interfere with her routine. She kept up appearances, smiled at friends, and nodded at neighbors, even as her mind raced with worrying. Every siren in the distance made her heart jump. Every unmarked car parked near her apartment set her nerves on edge. She lived in a constant state of anticipation, the calm of her suburban life overlaying the storm brewing just beyond her reach. Then one evening, everything changed. Emma was walking home from the clinic when she noticed a flash of movement near the shopping center. A figure darted between parked cars, moving too quickly to be ordinary. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Ryan. She had no time to think, only to act on instinct. He looked around nervously, aware of someone or something tracking him. Emma's stomach dropped as she realized that the law enforcement officers she had feared for weeks might be closer than she had imagined. She didn't call out, didn't signal him. She simply watched, frozen by the knowledge that this sighting meant danger. The peaceful world she had known seemed to fracture, replaced by a tense awareness that nothing would ever be the same. That night, Emma lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The quiet suburb had never felt so loud. She could hear her own heartbeat in the silence, each beat reminding her of the impossible choice ahead. She loved Ryan, and she wanted to protect him, but she knew the stakes had just become higher. The police would be more vigilant, and any mistake could be disastrous. Yet despite the fear, a part of her felt determined. She had always believed in Ryan, and now that belief was being tested in ways she could never have anticipated. The town remained still, unaware of the storm building on its edges, and Emma, alone in her apartment, understood that her life had just changed forever. Emma faced a choice that weighed heavily on her, one that seemed impossible yet inevitable. The world around her felt smaller and sharper at the same time, as if every corner held a hidden threat. She could stay in the safety of her apartment, follow the rules, and pretend everything was normal, but that thought brought her no comfort. The image of Ryan, desperate and running, kept replaying in her mind. She knew he was depending on her, even if he didn't say it aloud. The fear gnawed at her, but it was interlaced with a strange kind of determination, the kind that comes from loyalty and love in equal measure. She began to pack lightly, selecting only what seemed essential: a change of clothes, a few toiletries, her phone and charger, and a small bag of cash she had saved. Every item felt like a lifeline, a tool for survival in a world that was suddenly unpredictable. Leaving her apartment that night, she felt the chill of the air more sharply than usual. The streets that had always seemed familiar now felt foreign and dangerous. Surveillance cameras blinked from every corner, the occasional streetlight highlighted patches of shadow where someone could be hiding. Cars passed slowly, and every reflection in a window seemed like a potential threat. Emma moved quickly but with caution, making her way toward the outskirts of town where she had agreed to meet Ryan. She felt the pulse of adrenaline in her veins, a mixture of fear and focus that sharpened her senses. Each step was a calculation, each turn a careful choice to avoid detection. The normal rhythm of life, the hum of distant traffic, the occasional bark of a dog became almost threatening in the context of her flight. As she approached the meeting point, Emma's mind raced. She thought about the police, about what they might know, about the reports that had begun circulating online and in local news. She had learned quickly that authorities could piece together patterns from the smallest clues: a late-night grocery run, a familiar car scene parked in an unusual spot, or even a social media post. Every move had to be deliberate, every action precise. The thought that one careless decision could end everything weighed heavily on her, but she pressed on. Emma's focus narrowed to one thing: keeping Ryan safe. Hours passed as she waited in the shadows, scanning the area for any sign of him or of law enforcement. When Ryan finally appeared, moving cautiously and scanning his surroundings as if expecting danger at every step, relief washed over her, but it was mixed with anxiety. The reality of the situation was unavoidable. They were both now fugitives in a world that was suddenly hostile. Emma had made the choice to leave her safe life behind, and she understood that there was no turning back. Each street they took, each back road they navigated, was a step further from her old life and deeper into a world of uncertainty. The night stretched on, the darkness seeming to close around them. Emma felt the weight of responsibility like never before. Her own safety was secondary, the focus was Ryan. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant engine sound made her pulse quicken, but she kept moving, kept thinking, kept calculating. Despite the fear, there was an unspoken resolve between them, a shared understanding that survival required courage, quick thinking, and the willingness to face consequences neither of them had fully imagined. In that tense stillness, Emma realized the magnitude of what she had chosen. There was no turning back, only the path forward, fraught with danger and uncertainty, but guided by a loyalty that refused to waver. The days on the run stretched into a blur of motion and anxiety, each one blending into the next as Emma and Ryan navigated a world that seemed to shrink around them. Every road, every alley, every back entrance became a potential escape route or a trap. They avoided highways and main streets, choosing winding country roads that offered cover but demanded patience. Emma learned quickly to notice patterns: the timing of patrols, the habits of local law enforcement, even the subtle changes in traffic and lighting. Every small observation could mean the difference between safety and capture. Sleep became a luxury, and rest was brief, often taken in the back of a borrowed car or a secluded clearing. Life on the run was exhausting in ways Emma had never imagined. Meals were scavenged or bought in haste, clothing became dirty and worn, and the constant fear pressed on her chest like a weight that never lifted. The tension between them was constant, though unspoken. Emma observed Ryan closely, noticing the cracks in his composure that he tried to hide. His calm exterior masked a storm of worrying and desperation, and she realized that despite her own fear, she needed to remain steady, to anchor him as much as he anchored her. Each decision carried weight, choosing which town to pass through, which gas station to use, and when to trust strangers for temporary help. They learned to trust only each other. The psychological toll was immense. Emma began to question herself and her choices. Had loyalty led her into a trap of her own making? Could love justify risking her own future and freedom? But alongside doubt, there was determination. She reminded herself that Ryan was more than the rumors and accusations. She clung to the belief that he could be redeemed or, at the very least, protected from immediate harm. Every rustling bush, every distant siren, sharpened her senses and reinforced her vigilance. She could not afford hesitation, not for a moment. A small mistake highlighted just how fragile their situation had become. One morning, they stopped at a rural gas station, thinking it safe because it was far from major roads. Emma stepped inside to pay for fuel, and the cashier's glance lingered a fraction too long, a spark of suspicion in their eyes. It was a momentary lapse, but it sent a wave of panic through her. She returned to the car, heart pounding, and they left before any questions could be asked. That incident, small as it seemed, served as a harsh reminder. 1 second of carelessness could unravel everything. It was a lesson they would carry with them for the rest of their flight. Despite the fear, there were fleeting moments of connection and quiet understanding. Emma and Ryan shared glances that conveyed gratitude, trust, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the risks they faced together, but the shadow of pursuit never lifted. The knowledge that law enforcement was relentless, that the world outside their immediate path could turn against them at any moment, created an undercurrent of tension that never faded. Every mile traveled, every night spent in hiding, deepened their reliance on one another, cementing a bond that was intense, complicated, and fraught with danger. The days merged into a continuous test of endurance, judgment, and courage, leaving Emma and Ryan walking a precarious line between survival and disaster, aware that one misstep could end everything in an instant. The sense of temporary safety Emma and Ryan had clung to shattered completely when betrayal arrived in the form of someone they had once considered an ally. One of Ryan's old friends, someone who had shared in his past schemes, had decided to cooperate with authorities to reduce their own legal consequences. The tip-off came unexpectedly, a whisper that traveled faster than they could anticipate. Emma realized too late that the carefully chosen routes and hidden spots they relied upon were no longer secure. The betrayal was more than just practical, it cut deeper, undermining the fragile trust that had kept them going. Every glance over a shoulder now carried the weight of uncertainty, and every noise in the distance felt amplified with the threat of capture. Forced to abandon their vehicle and the supplies they had painstakingly gathered, they plunged into a dense forest outside a small town. The terrain was difficult, filled with thick underbrush and uneven ground, but it offered the cover they desperately needed. Emma felt the sting of scratches along her arms and legs, but the physical discomfort was insignificant compared to the mental strain. She had to keep moving, keep thinking, and keep Ryan safe, all while navigating a landscape that seemed designed to slow them down. Their days blurred together as they relied on each other for guidance and support, learning quickly how to travel quietly, avoid leaving tracks, and ration the limited food and water they carried. The isolation brought harsh clarity. Emma began to understand the true extent of Ryan's life outside her knowledge. She discovered the deeper connections, the more serious criminal activities he had been involved in, and the network of people who could either help or betray them in an instant. It was a revelation that shook her belief system and forced her to confront uncomfortable truths. The man she loved was not the same person she had thought she knew, and the situation demanded a new level of awareness and caution. Emma felt herself walking a tightrope between fear, loyalty, and growing doubt, each step requiring careful calculation. As they moved deeper into the forest, the days became a relentless routine of survival. Every morning they assessed their surroundings, planned the next moves, and remained alert to distant sounds that might signal danger. Nights were spent in tense silence, listening to the wind, the rustle of animals, and the occasional far-off siren. Emma noticed subtle changes in Ryan, moments of fatigue, hesitation, and unease that spoke volumes about the pressure he felt. She understood that her role had shifted from companion to protector, guiding both of them through a reality that was increasingly unpredictable. Despite the fear and betrayal, moments of quiet intimacy occasionally emerged, fragile but potent. They shared small gestures of reassurance, brief smiles, and subtle nods that reinforced their connection. It was a bond strengthened by necessity, by the constant presence of danger, and by the realization that they were facing something far bigger than either of them had imagined. The forest, while isolating, became a crucible in which trust, survival instincts, and loyalty were tested daily. Emma and Ryan moved through this hidden world, fully aware that any misstep, any exposure, could end everything in an instant, yet compelled to continue forward together into uncertainty. After the grueling weeks on the run, the relentless pressure of their situation reached a breaking point. Emma and Ryan had been constantly moving, hiding, and watching, their bodies and minds pushed to the edge. Every sound in the night, every flicker of movement through the trees, and every distant siren reminded them that law enforcement was closing in. The betrayal they had endured weighed heavily on them both, yet it had also forced a kind of sharpened focus. They knew that eventually there would be no more options for escape, and the choices they made next would determine everything. Emma's mind was racing as she considered the impossible. They could continue running, risking exhaustion, injury, or capture in the wilderness. Or they could attempt to surrender, facing the consequences of the law in a calculated move that might finally bring an end to the chase. She realized that remaining hidden was only a temporary solution. The world outside the forest was closing in, and the authorities had resources they could not outmatch indefinitely. In a moment of clarity, she made a decision. If she surrendered, perhaps she could influence Ryan to do the same, turning the relentless pursuit into a controlled conclusion rather than a dangerous gamble. The next morning, Emma approached Ryan with a look that conveyed urgency without words. She guided him through the forest, navigating paths they had used to evade capture until they reached a small clearing near a road. The presence of law enforcement was now unmistakable in the distance. Police vehicles, sirens, and flashing lights signaled that the trap had closed around them. Emma's heart pounded, but she felt a strange calmness as well, a sense that the end of the chase was finally within reach. She stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of surrender, and called Ryan to follow. To her astonishment, Ryan hesitated. For a moment, it seemed as though he might bolt again, risking everything in one desperate dash. But then, after what felt like an eternity, he mirrored her movements. Together, they stepped out of the shadows and into the open, their hands raised, faces tense but resolute. The authorities quickly moved to secure the scene, but there was no struggle. Emma's calculated choice had created a moment of control, transforming a situation fraught with danger into one with order and safety. The aftermath was both sobering and surreal. Emma and Ryan were taken into custody, processed, and separated for questioning. The reality of the legal consequences began to settle in, but there was relief as well. They had survived the chase, avoided violence, and maintained a fragile sense of dignity in a situation that could have ended much worse. The months of running, hiding, and evading had tested every aspect of their courage, judgment, and loyalty. Emma's role had been pivotal, her decisions shaping the outcome and ensuring that both of them emerged physically unscathed, if not legally unscathed. In the quiet that followed, Emma reflected on the ordeal. Love and loyalty had driven her to make choices she never thought possible, placing herself in danger for someone she believed in. Yet the experience had also forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, morality, and the consequences of actions taken in desperation. Ryan's surrender was a testament to the bond they shared and a reminder that even in the most extreme circumstances, choices matter. Their story, marked by fear, courage, betrayal, and resilience, would remain a lasting example of how the pursuit of loyalty and love can lead through unimaginable trials, shaping lives in ways that are unforgettable and irreversible.